Tonight on News 5 Live, right now the Verde pleads not guilty to extortion charges. Two 5-year-old girls claim that they were sexually assaulted by a 14-year-old boy. New details are released in the stabbing death of a Keycocker resident by his cousin, a mental health patient. Director of Health Services responds to concerns raised about pharmaceuticals and the shortage of antiretroviral medication. And a family of 8 receives a 2-bedroom home through the Hand in Hand Ministries. We'll tell you why this 396th house is a special build for Hand in Hand. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
For those who like to have unlimited options in life, don't let limits hold you back.
Prepaid and hybrid customers can go unlimited with Smart's Unlimited Daily Pass.
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, October 23rd. I am Marlene Cuellar. Tonight, there is a very disturbing report of sexual assault against children. Police have finally confirmed a report circulating since the start of the week that a 5-year-old girl has been sexually assaulted in the South. The young girl made the report at the Hopkins police station, where she identified a 14-year-old as the perpetrator. While her name will not be disclosed, a medical examination conducted on her confirms she was carnally known. Another 5-year-old made a similar report in Hopkins against the same 14-year-old. In this instance, however, the doctor could not confirm that she was carnally known. The Ministry of Human Development has been called in and is partnering with police to properly address the sexual crime committed against the young girl by the 14-year-old. ACP Joseph Maivet shares the details.
She reported to the police that her daughter made a complaint to her that she was assaulted by a young man who lives in that immediate vicinity. There was also a second complaint made where an older man, accompanied by his 5-year-old niece, visited as well the Hopkins police station and made a similar report. A medical examination was done on both of those 5-year-old female children, where one of them is said to have been carnally known, whilst the other, there seemed to have been no sexual activity. It is a matter being investigated at this time. The Human Development Department has been brought on board. From what the police have been able to gather so far is that the accused person involved in this or in these incidents seemed to be a 14-year-old male. So we are in the process of continuing the investigation, and thereafter whatever is gathered evidential-wise will be compiled and sent to the DPP for her direction.
What happens in a case like this? I'm so sorry. What happens in a case like this where it's another minor that is being accused of committing a crime, a sexual crime?
Well, that's why this has to be carefully looked at, putting together the evidence in order for the DPP to decide whether or not there is a sufficient amount of evidence whether or not he should face any charges or so. Hence the reason for a proper investigation.
Reynaldo Verde, the Deputy Director of General Tax Services, remains in jail in the United States. Verde is facing charges of extortion and attempted extortion. Today he appeared before Judge Alicia Reyes in a Miami court, where he pleaded not guilty to the charges. The owner of Orchid Bay in Corozal laid out a complaint against Verde to the Federal Investigation Bureau, in which he made allegations that Verde attempted to get more than $300,000 from him to wipe away taxes owed by Orchid Bay, but only got $1,000. Verde was nabbed on his way back to Belize from official business in Brussels on September 6th. There are fresh details tonight in the unfortunate stabbing death of Isaac Marin and the stabbing of his brother Carlos in Keycocker. 17-year-old Isaac died shortly after the attack, and Carlos is in a stable condition. The person behind this stabbing is their cousin, Jamie Marin, a mental health patient. Isaac is the second person to be killed in 4 months by mental health patients. Police are proceeding with the investigation, but it is yet to be determined what charges will be placed on Jamie Marin. Here's News 5's Dwayne Moody.
Will Jamie Marin be charged for the murder and attempted murder of his cousins in Keycocker? The diagnosed mental health patient remains in police custody tonight as investigations continue into what transpired in the wee hours of Tuesday at the Marin's family house at the corner of Luciano Reyes Street and Avenida Langosta on the island. What has been confirmed is that Jamie stabbed 17-year-old Isaac and his brother, 25-year-old Carlos Marin. Only Carlos survived the attack. Isaac perished minutes later while receiving treatment at the medical center on the island.
They observed two persons with apparent stab wounds and bleeding. Those persons were taken to the Kikaka Polyclinic, where upon arrival, 17-year-old Isaac Marin succumbed to those injuries. Also injured along with him was his brother Carlos Marin. What the police know so far is that Carlos Marin was socializing with a cousin, one Jamie Marin, inside the living room of their home when obviously an altercation ensued, and as a result Isaac Marin then got up from where he was sleeping in an attempt to aid his brother, and that was when he too was stabbed.
As the official details of the incident were shared with the media today, Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Maivet revealed that the accused was also stabbed multiple times during the incident. So where does that put the stabbing death investigation?
The third party, Jamie Marin, also received stab wounds. He had since been treated at the Kikaka Polyclinic and is now in police custody.
Have charges been preferred on Mr. Jamie as yet?
No, not as yet. We have not yet preferred any charges against him.
Is there a reason why charges have not been laid as yet on him?
Well, we are doing the investigation, recording statements and preparing the file. We were told at some point that the accused person in this crime had some mental issues, so that too would be taken into consideration whilst the file is being compiled, and then that will be sent to the DPP's office for her direction.
Is that the reason why police has not classified this death as a murder?
To some extent, that would be a part, as well as the post-mortem results.
Will there be an investigation into charging Carlos Marin for the stabbings that Jamie Marin received?
Well, at this point, the investigation is still ongoing, so we do not know who all will be charged as yet.
As Kikaka chairperson Selene Villanueva Pot confirmed to News 5, islanders are aware that Jamie has been diagnosed with a mental health condition and was being treated.
It is known that he is a mental patient. What we do know is that he was getting help, he was evaluated and was on treatment. I really can't say what triggered last night or what transpired. Whenever incidents like these transpired, it shakes the entire community. We believe that in a situation like this, it's something that triggered the patient, and it could have been worse, and we're very grateful that we didn't lose more than one person in this unfortunate event.
This is the second person to lose his life in 4 months at the hands of mental health patients. The Belize Police Department is looking carefully at the cases.
It is one that we're working with through the Ministry of Health to see how they can help us to do the relevant evaluation and write the relevant report. And once that is done, then we will then forward the file to the DPP, and the DPP is going to make determination as to whether or not we're going to charge for murder, manslaughter, or whatever the case may be. It is a situation that, again, it's unfortunate, but something needs to be done to see how we can address it.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Police also provided an update to the murder of a Belize City resident. Brandon Bennett was executed on Monday night and his body dumped on the road in Vista Del Mar after 8 o'clock. There were multiple gunshots on the body. The 26-year-old was recently charged for gang affiliation, but it is not known if that was the motive behind his tragic end. Today, Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Maivet told the media that their investigation has them tracking Bennett's whereabouts prior to his murder.
So far, we are following several leads, and during the course of the investigation, we also determined that Bennett had left his home on Louis Bevan Street sometime shortly after 7 p.m. On foot and made his way to the Supal Street area. As a result of that, we are following several leads in that area. Police are on the ground conducting more investigation in that area.
What is the preliminary investigation showing as to a motive behind this crime? Because we know that Mr. Bennett had been charged or had been arraigned, I believe, about 2 or 3 weeks ago for gang affiliation.
So far, we have not yet been able to establish a clear motive. We are looking at some gang issues, but yes, indeed, we have not been able to determine a clear motive.
Would you say that he was in rival gang territory when he went to Supal Street?
I would not go as far as to say that. Obviously, he was just passing through that area from what has been gathered so far.
And no reasoning for why he was in the area at this
No
point?
reasoning at this point in time.
Alan Pitts, a support technician of Boroboom Village, was injured shortly after midnight on Tuesday when the vehicle he was traveling in came under gunfire. It is reported that sometime around 2 o'clock this morning, Belize City Police visited the Belize Healthcare Partners, where they observed Pitts suffering from a gunshot wound to the left shoulder. He told investigators that he was along with a group of friends in a Kia Sorento SUV driving on Baghdad Street, and when they turned right into Alexandria Street, someone opened fire on them. Shortly thereafter, Pitts realized that he had been injured. This morning, ACP Joseph Maivet gave details on the incident.
After 1 a.m. this morning, Belize City Police was alerted of a shooting incident on Baghdad Street in Belize City, where upon arrival, they canvassed the area and were told that the victim had already been taken to the Belize Healthcare Partner, whereupon moving to the Belize Healthcare Partner, they observed one Alan Pitts, 27 years, of a Boroboom Village address with an apparent gunshot injury to his left shoulder. What was reported to the police that Pitts was along with 2 other persons traveling in a Kia Sorento vehicle coming from the direction of the Swing Bridge and was just turning into Alexandria Street when he heard several bangs that sounded like gunshots and realized that he was shot. As a result, he was then immediately transported to the healthcare partners. Police officers had been on the scene since last night. We were back on the scene this morning, trying to establish whether or not we could have determined who was responsible for the shooting. But so far, we have still not yet been able to determine who was responsible.
Or a motive either?
So far, neither a motive has yet been established, because what we had also gathered is that he is not from that area and he was not frequenting that area. He was just passing through.
Coming up, the Attorney General Mike Perrafit is making a bid for chairmanship.
Good night, people.
As the UDP gears up for its February 2020 convention, which will elect a successor to Prime Minister Dean Barrow as leader, a number of persons are throwing their hat in the ring. Attorney General Michael Perrafete, twice an unsuccessful candidate for the United Democratic Party, is making a third bid, this time for chairmanship in the coming weeks. His intention to replace Alberto August as the presiding officer of the ruling party was made formal this morning to Secretary General Pearl Stewart. Thus far, Perrafete's bid is uncontested, and interestingly, his candidacy is fully endorsed by August, who has submitted his name for vice chairman of the UDP. August admits that many would view it as a voluntary demotion. However, he maintains that it is time for new blood to steer the party in a different direction. August told News 5 this evening that he has decided to run on Perrafete's slate as a second in command. Earlier today, we sat with Perrafete, who explained the reason behind his running for chairmanship.
Well, it's important from a party perspective to listen to what your colleagues and your fellow UDP people are encouraging you to do and want you to do. I was encouraged by one member of the party to think seriously about it. I thought about it over the weekend, and by then people started to hear about the possibility of me being the chairman, and I was encouraged by a wide cross-section of the party to seek the chairmanship. It is their belief that going into an election year, they have every confidence that I could do a decent job to help the party steer the ship into the 2020 election. So, being the UDP loyalist that I am, and I'm totally in love with my party, I have to heed that call, and so I made the decision then to inform the Secretary General this morning that I am vying for the chairmanship of the UDP.
As far as you know, are there any other horses in the race, so to speak?
As far as I know, no. I was informed by the party this morning that nobody else has indicated that they are vying for the chairmanship of the party. So far as I know, it's only me.
These are rather fluid times within the Democratic Party, insofar as it's shaping up for the leadership convention next year, and a couple of months thereafter will be the elections of 2020. Where do you see some of the support within the party shifting? I know you have two candidates vying for leadership of the party, Patrick Father, John Saldivar. Where do you see things going at this point?
I will tell you February 10th. We don't know. There's a lot of energy all around, which is always good for any political organization, any organization, period. But the energy that I see that's being put into the campaigns for the various positions within the party that will become available February 9th. I mean, the energy is just exciting, and it's nice and it's good. And I'm hoping that if I am lucky enough to be elected chairman, that my job would be to manage it, manage the excitement, manage the energy, to ensure that while we do have an energetic campaign, that we are able to heal after that and to make sure that we can come together as one indeed united Democratic Party.
With the leadership convention scheduled for February 2020, it would appear that the highest number of delegates is adding up in favor of John Saldivar, who lost to Patrick Faber in June 2016 when they both ran for deputy leadership. But that depends on who you ask. While Hugo Pat, Beverly Williams, Shine Barrow, and Philip Willoughby have all come out in favor of Saldivar, Deputy Prime Minister Faber is also shoring up support from his colleagues with an ongoing leadership campaign. We asked Senator Perrafete to weigh in on that race, and here's his response.
To be honest with you, I haven't been measuring it. You hear all kinds of things, and people can say all kinds of things. Nobody will know. We can speculate all we want. Nobody will know until the ballots are cast and people vote and we count the votes. All I know is that I love the energy and the excitement around it. And I want to make sure that if I'm lucky to be chairman, to make sure we can manage that energy, like I said. In terms of who has the advantage, who has the disadvantage, you could talk to 100 people and get 100 different responses. So I don't want to be 101. I mean, you can take any position and you could be right or wrong. So I would say just encourage everybody to campaign as hard as they can. And on February 9th, at the end of the day, we will know exactly who was having the advantage all along and who will be victorious on that day.
As for the first deputy leadership, Parafit maintains that both candidates, Tracy Panton and Hugo Pat, are well-intentioned, in spite of who they are supporting for party leader. He says that in the true spirit of democracy, they are free to vote for whomever it is they believe is the better candidate. The principal concern, says Parafit, is that the party is able to heal quickly as it moves into the next general elections.
I'm sure Tracy will have her people who are excited about her. I'm sure Hugo will have his people who are excited about him. That's the process. You know, it's a democracy. And it gets exciting, and at times it could get messy. That's what democracy is. But like I said, we have to make sure, my only concern is to ensure that when all is said and done, that we remain a united Democratic Party. That's the main focus for me. Whoever the delegates decide on who they want to lead, that's their choice, and everybody will have to respect that choice. For now, it just shows that within the UDP, democracy is alive and well, and we're looking forward to interesting times indeed.
With the convention coming up on February 9th and the general elections expected to be held in November 2020,
yes.
Do you believe that interim is sufficient for the party to heal going into the next national vote?
Yes, I do. And we will have to, whether we want to or not, we will have to. And like I said, I don't say that in anticipation that there will be any problems. When you look at the people who have put in their names so far, you look at John, you look at Patrick, you look at Trace, you look at Hugo, I am extremely confident that none of those four would do anything that would not be in the best interest of the party.
So who is Parafit supporting for new leader of the UDP? That's a question we put to him during our sit-down this morning. And he told us that despite having a vote to cast, he is remaining neutral, since his prospective role as incoming chairman will require him having to work with both candidates before and after the race.
I am running as an independent chairman. I don't think, when you look at the constitution of the UDP, the leader, first deputy, and second deputy must be persons who come from the House of Representatives. The chairman and deputy chairman cannot come from the House. It can come, any other UDP may vie for chairman or deputy chairman. And I think the reason for that is clear. You want the chairman, when you look at the UDP constitution, you want the chairman and the deputy chairman to be as neutral as possible. Why? The chairman under the UDP constitution is the chief referee of most disputes or most questions, or anything you can think about. The chairman plays a very key role. So I don't think it would be healthy for any presumptive chairman or any possible chairman to take a side with any of the other candidates, whether for leadership, for first deputy or second deputy. I don't think that that's an important thing for me to do, and that's not what I'm going to do. I don't believe that John or Patrick need my help at all. I think they're perfectly capable of running their own campaigns without me. But of course I have a vote, and I know who I will vote for, but I don't think that I should be aligned on any slate with any one of them. Whichever one of them wins, I will respect them as the new leader-elect of the UDP. And if I am lucky enough to be the chairman of the party, then I will serve whoever the delegates decide they want to be their leader.
A secretary for the Dangrega Magistrates Court was convicted of theft. Dorcas Callis was charged for stealing $1,000 from the court on December 6, 2013. The magistrate imposed a non-custodial sentence upon the former senior court employee, and she was fined $2,000 or in default 2 years imprisonment. Callis was also ordered to pay compensation to the victim, Oliver Natividad, in the sum of $1,000. While the senior employee was convicted, prosecutor in the case, Senior Superintendent Rodriguez, was unable to seal a conviction against junior cashier Jenny Ciego for 2 counts of theft, which amounted to $4,300. The theft was detected during an audit in January 2018, when discrepancies were found on 2 receipts. But the case against Ciego fell apart when the prosecutor was unable to get witnesses to testify against her, and the magistrate dismissed the 2 counts of theft. Both women have been relieved of their jobs. After the break, the Ministry of Health fires back on the issue of generic meds.
The Belize Coastal Zone Management
experience to meet the demands of our customers' digital lifestyle. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
A lack of antiretroviral medication is putting lives at risk. If a person with HIV does not take the meds as prescribed, it can cause HIV to become resistant to the drugs, and the patient will not have treatment options. This week, we've been following reports that there is an acute shortage at the public health facilities because the supplier, an Indian company, has not been able to deliver on orders for the medication. News 5's Hippolyta Novella looks into the shortage and its effects.
In June 2019, the 2017 HIV statistical report was published, and figures showed that of the 37,000 HIV tests conducted that year, there were 223 new cases of HIV in Belize. At December 2017, a total of 1,385 persons living with HIV were on antiretroviral treatment, taking generic medications such as lopinavir, ritonavir to suppress the viral load and prevent transmission. 26-year-old Javier Paz was diagnosed with HIV in August and has joined the program.
I'm literally very new to the whole treatment and everything. I haven't really learned much about it, but I know enough to know, this is the easier step for me to take.
But that step has gotten difficult and life-threatening because the country has run out of the much-needed medication.
The issues that I'm having is that I cannot restock on it right now. Apparently there is none in any of the free facilities within the country. So what I have left is only 11 of them, excluding the one that I will take tonight.
So 11 pills, 11 days. Mm-hmm. What happens after the 11th day?
Well, I've been trying to reach out to organizations that I heard of to see if they can help me in getting access to medication. But, it was just today that I found this out, so I haven't heard back from them or anything. I've tried reaching out to friends who live in the States that work at pharmaceutical companies that deal with these types of diseases that bring down your immune system, but they don't carry this specific type of medication either. So at this point, I cannot say what will happen.
In May of this year, the government of Belize made payments to the tune of $241,000 to an Indian pharmaceutical supplier for a total of 4,300 bottles as part of its annual unusual procurement process. The company has failed to deliver the stock, putting the lives of many at risk. Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, says that the Indian company is experiencing multiple issues with production and distribution.
We started procuring generic medications from 2006 directly from Indian companies, making us one of the countries that was procuring at one of the lower prices in the entire region. What has happened now is that companies in India with which we used to do business, some of them have started downscaling their production of antiretrovirals, and some of them have shifted to other medications that perhaps are more lucrative as a business. So we did our procurement to find one particular antiretroviral from April of this year. We did payment in May. We were supposed to have gotten that product in June, but because there's a downscaling of the production, there's bigger markets that are actually buying more. South Africa, for example, buys maybe 1 million bottles when I think our procurement is 3,600. So you are not going to be the first on the list even though you have paid for it.
But even so, just last week the government paid a further $260,000 for other key antiretrovirals that should be delivered within few weeks.
We were understanding that the companies were having difficulty in accessing the raw materials. You notice that earlier in the year there was a notion that some of the antihypertensive medications had cancer agents that were tainting the raw materials, and so I think they were trying to safeguard that. Mind you, that's not an excuse.
In June, the Ministry of Health realized that the antiretroviral would not be delivered according to schedule and looked to its neighbors for assistance.
Reaching out to countries to see who could loan us or donate to us, we managed to get a loan from Costa Rica. That loan is still owed, but the countries in the region are also facing the same situation. So I think it's one medication that I think we're at zero stock, which is lopinavir, ritonavir, and that's the generic name. And I'm aware that one other medication that's a triple combination where people would take one single pill, I think we have stocked that out of that. My understanding, however, is that you are not going to be able to get that one single pill, but the other ingredients are available as separate tablets. So patients are perhaps going to be getting 2-3 tablets instead of taking the one pill. So I know we have stock out of that. I am not so sure of what the status is in terms of when that particular product will arrive. In terms of the one we have stocked out, the company has told us that it's going to be here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
But persons like Paz do not have 3 weeks. Adverse effects can be experienced by persons living with HIV if they go long enough without taking their medication. They began developing resistance to the meds.
Your body could develop some sort of resistance to the medication, which means when you start again, eventually you will notice that it's not working with you. But there would be no way to prove that because, within the country we don't have resistant testing for HIV. In this country we have first and second line medication. Once you've surpassed those medications, there's nothing else for you, which is why a lot of people are concerned about this issue because, one day is already too much without medication.
The stock of antiretrovirals put Belize's commitment to the UN 1990 goal, which in part seeks to have 90% of people living with HIV with an undetectable viral load.
We find the situation unacceptable as well because we're dealing with people's lives. As a country, we have subscribed to United Nations Joint Program on HIV and AIDS to the 1990 goals, which looks at testing 90% of persons living with HIV and AIDS and having them know their status, getting 90% of those on linked to care and on retrovirals. And the third 90 speaks to having 90% of those on antiretrovirals having a viral load suppression.
We are striving to reach for people living with HIV as a national response to have an undetectable viral load, which means that a person living with HIV not necessarily means that the virus isn't there, but it's so minute in your system, controlled by the medication, that you cannot even transmit HIV. It's controlled. And then it puts also that at risk, like if a person is undetectable and out of medication, allows the virus to replicate. Because the idea of the medication, they suppress the virus in order for the virus not to reproduce within the body.
So if we cannot effectively address pillar 2 and 3, adherence and the viral load suppression, if we are constantly having stock out of medications.
If the Indian companies was to halt production of antiretrovirals, to which company or country would the government turn to then? That is what the Ministry of Health is contemplating at the moment. Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
The Ministry of Health today responded to concerns raised over the importation of generic drugs. Giovanni Brackett says the FDA-approved drugs are not available, and while generic drugs on the local market can all be classified as bad, not all are good. Dr. Manzanero, the Director of Health Services, says the FDA drugs are for the U.S. market, not for Belize. Isani Caetano reports.
The procurement and retail of over-the-counter and prescription drugs have become areas of concern for persons who are seeking medication at pharmacies across the country. The issue was once again raised by activist Giovanni Brackett, whose presentation on the matter has prompted the Ministry of Health to respond to questions raised about generic drugs versus name-brand medication that have been approved by the Federal Drug Administration.
FDA approved this for a U.S. market. That is a different situation from what happens in Belize because we don't have the full listing of what's FDA approved for use in the U.S. versus outside of the U.S. So that is done on an individual basis. In terms of procurement for us as the Ministry of Health, we do that through the open tender process. Tenders are done once a year. It's an open tender. Anybody who has an established company that has a duly license to import pharmaceuticals can submit a bid. There's a tender committee that goes through that process. Items are selected based on specific criteria. Those items are then submitted as in the form of a contract to the CEO for signature with the individual company for procurement.
While Brackett does admit that not all generic drugs are harmful or ineffective, he questions whether proper tests are conducted to measure their effectiveness.
I will say categorically that not all generic brand is bad, but I believe that from the complaints that I've heard, there's a lot of inferior products that is on the market. A lot of product that is out there in Chinese store, Indian store, and they are not effective. And I don't know, since the SI has passed, the latest aside that put a lot of stringent measures on for wholesalers to import these name brand product that was always on the market. Since I don't know if they have been doing a proper audit and to test the effectiveness of these generic brands.
Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero addresses opinions that have been formed by many when it comes to generic drugs. He says that the procurement process involves good manufacturing practices as well as other necessary requirements.
There's also this perception, and I think it's perception or notions that because it's a generic product, it doesn't have the same function or same pharmacological background that substantiates its use. But that's the reason why we ask for a GMP, a CPP, and a COA, because we don't have the mechanisms in place to do the testing for all the items that are circulating in our market. So once you ask them for that certification process, then that becomes your document that substantiates your procurement of a specific item.
Manzanero also describes the tendering process by using a basic example.
When we do our tender process, we do not put any brand to the product. I mean, I'll use a simple example of maybe an antibiotic, amoxicillin, which is a more common one that people are aware of, or ciprofloxacin. Once the tender process goes out, it will just say ciprofloxacin, the specific amount that we want, the specific dosage, whether it's for adult or pediatric. That's what goes out in the tender item. And then the suppliers can submit their bid and they can choose from wherever company they are dealing with. And then it goes in, when they submit their tender item, then they will submit by whether the company is from India, Costa Rica, El Salvador, the US, the UK, wherever. What we do as part of the tender committee is we do the selection process based on cost, based on the supplier reliability, based on whether the item that we are procuring has a GMP, CPP, or COA.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
The People's United Party is reacting to a report on the shortage of antiretroviral medication used to treat patients living with HIV. The PUP expressed concern over the unavailability of the life-saving medication, blaming the incompetence of the Ministry of Health for the shortage. The PUP has learned that patients are being turned back due to the lack of medication at public health facilities, exposing them to life-threatening risks. In a release this afternoon, the PUP also addresses the issue of the importation of generic medications into the local market as opposed to meds approved by the US FDA. The PUP states that an independent preliminary investigation has revealed that there are containers of quality medication purchased by reputable local pharmacies from credible manufacturers held up for months by the ministry, while inferior medication provided by new companies with allegedly high-level ministerial connections are released immediately. The PUP also alleges that there is corruption and complicity at the highest level of the ministry and says it will continue to investigate. When we come back, the Compol says major crimes are down, but in the West, crime has gone up by 100%.
Yes, come in.
The Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, was flanked by the top brass of the Belize Police Department, including regional commanders, as he released the crime report. Williams says major crimes have reduced somewhat nationally, but regionally, the Western Belt encompassing Belmopan as well as Santa Elena and San Ignacio, the numbers have gone up by 100%. Here's News 5's Dwayne Moody.
The third National Comstant exercise for 2019 for the Belize Police Department convened early this morning at the Police Training Academy in Belmopan. It was reintroduced by Commissioner of Police Chester Williams to comprehensively review reports on major and petty crimes as well as problem areas across the country. The review is assisting the department to re-strategize to ensure citizen security and a reduction in crimes. With just over 2 months left in the year, what's the forecast looking like?
Currently, I can say that our figures look good compared to the same period last year. It is not where we would have wanted to be, but it still is better compared to last year. We have some region, or one region in particular, where the major crime are up compared to last year. The other 3 regions are down. We now need to see how we can help the region that is behind to ensure that we close the gap by the end of the year this year.
Up to October 21st, 2018, our statistics show that there were 123 murders. Today, Compal Williams says that the figures are way less. He agrees, however, that while the murder count is down, several homicides recorded this year have been more vicious and multiple persons have been killed in one given incident. Gang-related murders have also decreased.
We did have some serious incidents where murders are concerned. We had the triple murder in on the highway. We have the 5 out at sea. Then we have a 2 in San Pedro. And despite the fact that we had those multiple murders within a short space of time during one incident, we are still able to have a murder figure which is below last year's figure. And that speaks volume to the effort that we have been doing. And again, compared to other years gone by where gang-related murders were dominating the murder count, this time we're seeing a significant reduction in gang-related murders, especially in Belize City.
Loss of life as a result of vehicular accidents on major highways continues to be a thorn, even as the department has put in place anti-drinking and driving initiatives, as well as reinforcing the use of protective gear. Over the weekend alone, 3 persons perished in fatal road traffic accidents.
It is somewhat of a social issue. Yes, we try to do as best as we can. And if you were in there as each presenter was presenting on whatever happens within the area, you would see that one of the things that I harped on the most is the issue of alcohol consumption. Alcohol consumption is a leading cause of death in our country. And until we as a nation come to that realization, things are not going to change. Because we, the police, cannot tell people not to drink.
But even as there has been an overall reduction in major crimes, the Western region has exhibited a spike in the past few months. In fact, Williams says that there's been a 100% increase in major crimes in the outskirts of Belmopan and out in Santa Elena, San Ignacio.
The Western region has an increase of 10 major crime compared to the same period last year. And they also have a 100% increase in murder compared to last year. So for me, that is bad. And we have to do something to address it. We have since seen a reduction, but we need to ensure that we put together a strategy that will be long-term to be able to address the issue, that we don't see it manifest itself again.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Commissioner of Police Chester Williams, during his interview with the media today, took aim at the liquor establishments who he says have been irresponsible. He contends that alcohol consumption has been at the root of many of the murders across the country. Recently, a woman was badly beaten outside of a nightclub in Belize City and was hospitalized, while another had been stabbed outside the same nightclub that same day. Williams blasted establishments that continue to threaten citizens' security. Today, he didn't spare any words, and while he may be bucking heads with the liquor licensing boards, Williams says it is what it is.
I have said to my commanders that I want us to go after these liquor establishments, and I know that there are some liquor licensing board which have said that the commissioner want to close down business and they are pro-business. I want to make it emphatically clear. I have no intentions of closing down business places. We are pro-business. Businesses are what drives our economy. I am out for closing down businesses that are doing things that is eroding the fabric of our society. And until we come to that realization, these nightclubs that do not comply with the law, these nightclubs that have activities of ill reputes going on within them, those are things that we don't need. And as I have said, and I say with no apology, we will do what we can to close them down. And if it is that the liquor licensing board do not want to work with us and continue to grant extensions to places that do not meet the legal requirement by law, then we're going to have a fight over it. Because we will then apply the law to do what we need to do to close them down.
Coming up after the break, a new home by Hand in Hand Ministries for a deserving family.
Hi, I'm Ayana from CBC, inviting you to attend the Belize City Council Super
Approximately 2,000 delegates, including key policy decision makers across all domains of critical care and from over 84 countries, gathered in Melbourne, Australia last week for the 14th World Congress of Intensive Care. Belize forms part of the World Federation of Societies of Intensive and Critical Care Medicine, which was established in 1977. Its objective is to promote the highest standards of intensive and critical care medicine. Representing Belize was Dr. Jorge Hidalgo, who was elected as Secretary General.
Well, the responsibility is an important one because, one, we need to essentially try to have our voice bring to the World Federation, trying to express our needs, trying to see how we can get some training, also trying to see if we can get some additional resources. But also as a broad, also we need to try to engage other countries to become members of the World Federation and also sharing the experience. When we formed the society, then we've been having different trainings, especially at Carl Huchner. Also, we've been participating in writing chapters of books. That also is important for us that know that in Belize also we have people that have knowledge and well-trained physicians. No? Despite of all the different challenges we face every day in the health system, also there are good things happening. In Belize, we have the intensive care profession, and I think so that's important to mention. The intensivists are doctors that essentially we deal with the very critically ill patients. Mean that we usually say to the low ones when someone is very critically ill, to ask if an intensivist is part of the group. There are only 3 intensivists in the country. One is myself, the other one is Dr. Fernando Cuellar, and the other intensivist is Dr. Pedro Arriaga, who just came back for his training in Canada.
According to Dr. Hidalgo, the 5-day Congress discussed the issue of diversity to include small countries around the table since their needs are different. The World Federation of Societies of Intensive and Critical Care Medicine is determined to increase its membership in developing and less populated countries.
The Congress was held in Melbourne, Australia, with more or less 84 countries participating, and during the Congress basically we discussed matters of critical care. One of the most important points that the Federation is interested is in the diversity. I mean that countries like us can have representation, because before only the big countries they can be represented, but now they say it's important for the small countries to have a voice, because of course our needs are completely different than probably Japan or some other more developing countries. No? In the practice of intensive care and critical care medicines, it's like we are a team. That means that normally the sessions now is an integrated session when we have doctors, nurses, physical therapists, respiratory therapists in a session combined. We share experience. They help us to with ideas as how we can grow in our health systems.
A deserving family of 8 received the key to their brand new home today in Belize City. Sylvia Castro, her husband, and their 6 children were begging for lodging in rundown houses, and after struggling for a while, they asked for help from Hand in Hand Ministries. And that help was officially handed over to them in the form of a 2-bedroom house off Holy Emmanuel Street. Reporter Andrea Palanco was at today's handing over ceremony and tells us more about the handing over of the new home to the Castro family.
Sylvia Castro received a key to her brand new house today. She and her family reached out to Hand in Hand Ministries a few years ago, and after she met their requirements, her home was funded and it was built 3 days ago.
Me siento alegre y le doy gracias a Dios porque pues fue un sueño para mí desde que comenzó el año. Yo siempre le pedí a Dios, siempre que llega un final de año, siempre me arrodillo y le pido a Dios que me ayude a conseguir por lo menos este año. Yo le pedí a Dios que me ayudara a conseguir una casa.
And Hand in Hand Ministries made those dreams possible with this 2-bedroom house with an indoor flush toilet, complete with plumbing and electricity. This is the 33rd house that they've built for this year.
Today is one of the best days because we are actually blessing a home for a deserving family. And this is very a special blessing for us because it was a house that was through the initiative of our leadership team. This is what we call a complete house. It comes with electricals, it comes with plumbing. It has 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen and a hall. And not all Hand in Hand house comes with such amenities. However, because this was a house donated from a local group, then they came with such things.
The leadership team is a small group of women. Each member is a previous recipient of a house from the Hand in Hand Ministries. They formed this group to give back to other deserving families, and this is the second house they've paid for. Over the past 3 to 4 years, they fundraised close to $15,000 to pay for this house for the Castro family.
From year to year, we do fundraising and different things in order to come up with the money for us to build this home.
How much did it take to get this house constructed?
Okay, it took us like basically 4 years for us to come up with the funds to build this home.
How much money was that?
Like basically like maybe 15,000.
Now you guys were also involved in the construction. Talk to me about that feeling, being able to give back in this way to others who gave to you guys.
Okay, well, it was an awesome feeling for the 4 days that we were here. It really have touched us, not only because of the condition of the family, but the fact that we were able to just reach our goal that we could have built for this family.
And this house couldn't have come at a better time for the Castros. For many years, they were living in this dilapidated home in deplorable conditions. Castro says that she couldn't afford a home of her own, and this was the only roof she was able to put over her family's head. But with this new home, all of that has changed.
Me ha cambiado bastante porque si usted puede ver mi casa allá atrás, está bien mal, bien viejita ya mis suegros la hicieron hace como 13 años y no se le ha dado, pues no ha habido la economía para arreglarlo y gracias a Dios pues ahora nosotros vamos a tener pues una vida mejor, más limpiamente porque las cosas aquí atrás no están muy bien. Hacemos sépticos así rápidos con tambos de hule y nunca podíamos tener uno como el que está ahorita de cemento.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, good night.